So I had an idea. I have a lot of people who contact me who say, "Oh, my parents won't let me become vegan, and I don't know what to say to them." So I thought, why don't I just say it to them for you? So here's a podcast where basically you can play it to your parents and they can listen to it. And I'm going to keep it fairly short, and you don't need to stay in the room, and they're just going to listen to what I've got to say, and maybe it will change their minds a bit. So here we go. If you'd like to set this up for your parents at this point, or your guardians, or whoever's looking after you, if you're too young to be sort of like having full control over what you're putting in your body, and you really want to be vegan, then yeah, just pause it in a sec, and I'll address them and talk to them for you. So okay, here we go. If you'd like to pause it now, and I'll start addressing the parents after this point. Hello, parents or guardians of the person who's making you listen to this. I'm just some guy off the internet. Sorry that you've had to do this. um, so yeah, I suppose like the reason this is happening is because you've ended up with some kids, haven't you? Whether you've adopted them or gone and had sex and had them, whatever. Like, you've ended up with these kids, and God, having kids, like everyone thinks it's like, oh, what a nice idea to watch them grow up, but it's like you change their messy diapers or nappies wherever you are, according to what you want to call them, and yeah, and then they just sort of like they go. There's like a moment where they're cute, and then suddenly they can make their own decisions, and they're annoying. I imagine if you got to the stage where you've got a kid who's making you listen to this, you're probably thinking like, "Oh, can they move out? Like, how old do they have to be before we can kick them out? Oh, I could do with turning their bedroom into a, like a spare room for my sanity. Like, I need my independence back. Why did I have a family? All of that stuff, Like, I get it, man. Like, having kids can be annoying. And vegan kids are probably even more annoying because, they're so self-righteous. They're, like, telling you what you're meant to do. They're, like, telling you what to cook for them. They're just, like... And they might have been influenced by, like, some friend at school or something who's, like, gone, hey, like, they've come round your house and been like, oh, your parents should be vegan, and then they've like listened to them, and you're like, oh, damn it, why have they got to be friends with that annoying kid? So I get it, man. I get where, like, as parents, where you're coming from. Yeah, and all the money you've spent on them as well, like for some dumb school trip or some shitty toy that they wanted, where you're like, oh yeah, this. They really wanted this toy for Christmas, and then they get it, and then like 2 weeks later they break it, and they don't even care, and they think Santa Claus bought it for them. And you've been through all of that, man, and you've just watched them and you've been there for them when they're sort of going through tough times. And now they're just going like, why are you eating this stuff? Like, we need to eat this. Oh, stop eating, I bet it's really annoying from your point of view. And you're like, oh, thanks, thanks for being grateful to these kids. So if you are at that stage where you're just sort of like waiting for them to leave and like just tolerating your own children, and they're telling you to be vegan, I was just thinking like some of the reasons why parents, I get it, like you don't, the whole idea your kid goes, I'm going to make these demands on what I eat, like some little diva, and you're just like, no, you're not. That's not going to happen in my house. You're not old enough to make these decisions yet. But I just want you to consider the fact that like they see the world a little bit different from you, and I admit like some parents might be worried, going, oh, is my daughter or son like becoming anorexic? Like, are they just doing this because they want to lose weight and fit in with the other kids at school? And I bet there's loads of that shit, man. If they're like 14, 15, like kids, you know what it's like. You've been there where it's just like, oh my God, I've got a spot. Is that girl gonna like me, or is that guy gonna like me, or am I too fat? And everyone's just trying to fit in with each other. But I think like anyone who's like properly got into veganism, and I don't know about your kids, they might be doing it as some sort of fad diet thing, but I think most people just do it because they want to be like kind people, and they just go, oh, I think it's wrong to kill animals. And I'm not saying like, and one of the problems with that is that it can suddenly mean that they see that you're not kind anymore, and they stop seeing you as sort of like these heroes who help them grow up. And it just creates all this conflict, doesn't it? And I can see why it'd stress someone out. But I just want you to know that, like, the majority of people aren't doing it because of some sort of eating disorder. They're just doing it because they don't want to be involved in this sort of... They're really thinking about the fact there's a slaughterhouse, like a house for slaughtering animals. And that's what they think about when they eat. And if you imagine, like, to them, it's like chewing on a human. Do you know what I mean? Like chewing on roadkill or something. So you've got to respect that they're just in a different headspace from you. And it's really, like, it gets to a point where it's really difficult for them. And is it more expensive is another issue. Okay, so it's like, all right, so now I've got to go to some health food store and spend like all my wages on this kid that, like, I mean, if they're 14, 15, like, you need to make them get a job, really, don't you? Like, you can tell them I told you that. It's like the vegan guy on the internet said, like, you need to get a fucking job. Like, go and do a paper round or something, you know, or whatever. What do kids do? Like, putting Skittles up in Skittle alleys, or what sort of job, or like walking people's dogs. Go get them to, like, just sit down and think about a job they can do. Because I agree with you, like, unless they're sort of like 12, 13, I think like 14, 15, they can just kind of find ways to make money, even if it's like helping out just sort of old neighbours that are just, you know, they've got their retirement and they just want to give their money away to kids to, like, clean out their guttering and mow their lawn or whatever. So, you know, encourage that, because obviously, but it's not actually that much more expensive. You don't have to buy them all these, like, fake meat products. And I think a lot of people think you have to eat that because you're going to be missing something from your diet if you don't eat meat. But what a lot of people don't realise is that all the animals that people eat are eating plants, and basically just by, like, it's not really like meat is another kind of food, it's just plants via an animal. So all we need to do is eat the plants. So you don't have to start buying them all these, like, vegan sausages and vegan burgers and stuff that are ridiculously expensive. I agree with that. The only thing that's kind of expensive is you might have to it's pretty cheap. Just tell them to eat oatmeal and bananas and stuff, and I don't know, just, you know, just like a lot of fruit. Fruit is good. Things are quite cheap that are like beans on toast, that's vegan. Beans and potatoes. Get some broccoli in. It shouldn't really cost more, and it should just, like, add a little bit more to your fruit salary and sort of less in other places, because meat and cheese and all that stuff is quite expensive. The only thing that is a little bit more expensive is the milks. And again, like, I think, like, get them to get a weekend job or whatever, and just, like, make them pay for it. Because you don't want to raise these sort of, like, brats who are like, oh, give me the milk that I think I should have. Like, you'd be like, well, if you want it, work for it. I agree with that. Sell some of your stuff. Sell some of those computer games you never play anymore. If you really care, sell your iPhone. Or just take it off your Christmas presents. I don't know. But yeah, I think, like, if they're really that passionate about it, they'll go that little bit extra. But just kind of prompt them maybe, and you can use it as leverage. But it's just things like almond milks and all that kind of stuff. And but you might want to buy them for yourself as well, because they are a lot healthier. Like, there's a lot of medical problems associated with milk, because if you think about it, it's pretty weird. It's like the lactations of another species that we're sort of stealing, so that's meant for their young, and we're drinking it, and it's not completely compatible with our body. It's sort of like designed to grow a cow so that it gets bigger. And also, just drinking milk as an adult's pretty weird. Like, I'm assuming you don't still breastfeed your children if they're old enough to complain about it. We're not really meant to drink sort of like mammalian milk as adults, so you'll be helping them out health wise as well. Probably down the line when they're like 40 and still asking you for a bit of money for, like, medical bills, like, you'll be saving yourself money in the long run. Okay, so there's that. What else? Yeah, don't worry about proteins. Like, there's proteins in plants basically. Like, if you think about gorillas and cows and stuff, they've all got protein. They're going to be getting enough iron. The one thing that they might need to take is a vitamin called B12, because it's usually, like, in quite dirty foods. Like, you find it in, like, the livers of animals and all that kind of stuff. And it's just because we have really hygienic food now. All the vegetables and stuff are very sort of, like, washed and cleaned. So it's something that grows in our gut. But to be honest, like, it's something like 37% of America has B12 deficiency, but only like 2% are vegan. So it's not. Maybe you might want to buy, like, a big tub of the vitamin B12 and, like, be taking it as a family, or just get your blood checked or whatever, because it's worth just knowing about this stuff. But yeah, and, like, don't be afraid of, like, a little bit of change. It probably, like, just test it out for a couple of weeks, and if it doesn't work, and also just remember that, like, people like convicted prisoners have the right to a vegan meal in prison. So if you think about it like that point of view, if these kids really don't want to eat this stuff anymore, like your kids, and I'm not saying it's like they're right, but it's just like kind of just try and see it from their point of view a little bit, because I know it's like, oh, they're going through this phase when they're like, just try and be understanding towards it. But yeah, I just think like, and also just appreciate the fact that you're kind of good parents, because you've raised someone who's just gone, I don't want to be involved in the injustice in the world. And I think that just shows you've kind of put some morals and virtues into your kids, even if you haven't, like, like somehow you've raised them to have that. And it's the same as kind of like, like the last generation behind you were all sort of, I don't know, like incredibly racist or something, or they used to just like hit you and it was like normal. I don't know, like it's just each generation sees the world a bit differently, and just be aware of it is all I'm saying, really. But I'm not teaching you how to parent. Just they're the issues that come up when it's usually like, oh, will they get enough protein? And a lot of you I think, are going to not do it because you're scared of change. It's just going to be a mixture of like, oh, financially, is it going to cost more to feed them? And then the other issue is just like, will they get ill on it? And the thing is, it's healthier for them. You're going to have healthier kids. And I try and just offer a bit of guidance with like nutrition and stuff. But basically, if they're eating a colourful diet full of fruits and vegetables, they're going to be very healthy. Just make sure they're eating enough. Like some people just don't eat enough, because you do have to eat a bit more as a vegan, because meat is like compact plants, while plants is the uncompacted version, I guess. So yeah, there you go. Thanks for listening to this. Sorry, I got a bit rambly, but yeah, well done for being good parents, because you've raised someone who doesn't want to be involved in the injustice. Maybe consider go vegan too, but I understand if you don't want to yet, then obviously your kids can't force it on you. But if just to try and keep the peace in the house, and just like make them get a job to pay for their own soya milk or almond milk, whatever. And yeah, it's just like, it's weird. You've got to see it as like, vegans see it as like a zombie movie where everyone else is eating flesh, and it's a little bit weird, but they're not going to judge you so much for it. I mean, they'll probably judge you a bit, to be honest, but they'll judge you less if you can at least be understanding to the way they feel. So that's all it comes down to, really. You're not going to have some brainwashed kid who like loses their identity. They just don't want to eat animals anymore, but they're still the same kid that you raised. Yeah, that's kind of it, really. So I hope that helps, and yeah, thanks for listening, and hopefully that can start a bit more of a conversation in your household that will stop a few arguments and you from turning to alcohol to cope. I don't know what your situations are. I'm just joking. All right, well, yeah, hope that helps. Bye.